Hello, everyone. We are going to talk today about cognitive biases. Hello, I'm Rohit, and I'm the author of this book, Decoding Gravity, Time, and Causality. This is a book which has come recently. Uh, it is now available all throughout India, and soon it will be launched internationally. And it describes what is called as dynamic general relativity, which is a theory of quantum gravity and a new theory of everything. Now, this is basically physics, and people would say, "Why am I discussing cognitive biases then?" Well, I'm also an author of this book, Decoding Human Psyche, and as you can see, I'm a doctor. I'm a medical doctor. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm a spine surgeon. I put screws in people's spine. And I am a physics enthusiast basically. But so people ask me how a person with very little physics background can write a theory of everything. And this is basically something which I personally don't know. But this is the book basically, Decoding Human Psyche. And it deals with a lot of biases. It deals with a lot of things actually, how the human mind works and how beliefs form and how cognitive biases are there and how they are affecting and all. So, so whatever I'm going to discuss today is highly relevant for this book basically, but it is given in this book. So it is extremely relevant for all researchers in all subjects, especially researchers um, who are doing research in physics, basically, physicists. So actually, my plan is to talk about all these things: belief bias, self-serving bias, congruence bias, and CCB cycle and Dunning-Kruger effect. All these are extremely interesting cognitive biases, and they need some discussion. And I'm not going to go too much into detail of each of them today. Today we are going to discuss only about congruence bias and CCB cycle, which is, I think, the reason, according to me, because of which I basically understood, and because of that, I could decipher the theory of everything. So this belief bias, self-serving bias, and Dunning-Kruger effect, I'm going to discuss in subsequent videos. Today we'll talk about congruence bias. Now, what are cognitive biases basically? Cognitive biases are, if you do a Google search, you will see that a cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking that occurs when people are processing and interpreting information or whatever. So you can do that. You can Google it, and you will find it. But I think it's a confusing definition, or you don't understand what exactly is a cognitive bias. So it's better to understand cognitive biases with some examples. Like when you have a cognitive bias, basically you have a gun with a barrel which is curved. So whatever you do, your gun is not going to shoot in a straight line. It's going to go in this direction. Another example is like, let's assume that you are in a car and you have a road and there is a mountain, and you have to cross the mountain and go straight ahead, and then you go into the tunnel. Now the tunnel is curved, so whatever you do, you have to follow the road, and the road goes into the tunnel and the tunnel turns, so you have to also turn. There's no way that you can go across the wall of the tunnel and go straight. So you cannot go straight. So this is basically bias. This is cognitive bias. So your line of thinking turns automatically in one direction. Believe me, cognitive biases are extremely common. Almost the literature on cognitive biases in all fields is it's increasing every day. Even in healthcare, cognitive biases are very important. But cognitive biases are extremely important wherever research is important. So they are very extremely important. Now, what is congruence bias? Um, Congruence bias and confirmation bias. These are two very important. They are basically cousins. Actually, they are almost the same. It's very confusing for some people to understand what exactly is congruence bias and confirmation bias. But imagine that. So before you go to congruence bias and CCB cycle, we want to understand these things. Actually, you have to understand what is a belief, what is a fact, and what is a pseudo fact. It's very difficult to define what is a belief, but if you think of economy and currency, what currency is for economy, belief is for thinking. So if you have the human mind or a thinking process, then belief is the currency of it. There are other currencies like thoughts or emotions, but beliefs are very important. And believe me, beliefs are extremely common. Extremely common means every day you keep on accumulating beliefs. Like I have a ring. I don't have a ring, but a lot of people have a ring. So I believe that the diamond in the ring is real. It's a belief. We don't know. We'll have to check for the purity of it. So once you go there and you check for the purity, after you find evidence that yes, that diamond is real, then that becomes a fact that yes, this diamond is a real diamond. Till the time you have evidence of it, firm evidence, it's just a belief. So you have to understand that these are subjective things. Like beliefs are very common. Like I like pizza is a belief. Tigers are very bad for us. That's a belief. So we have to stay away from tigers. So we have to stay away from the jungle, and we feel cozy in our home. These are beliefs. There's only one God, or there is no God. There are so many beliefs. Okay. In scientific method, also belief is very important. We'll come to that. But Democritus believed that everything is made up of small indivisible balls called as atomos. So Democritus believed that, and Socrates and Plato believed that they are not. It's not material, but material and form, two things. So everything is made up of two things, material and form. So this is belief basically. So you don't know exactly what it is, but you believe. Now it is extremely important how the beliefs form. And yeah, so pseudo fact. What is a pseudo fact? A fact, I told you, something which has extremely, you're very sure of it, extremely sure about it. That is a fact. But what is a fact for one would be a belief for the other. So these are extremely they are subjective. They change from one person to another. But there are facts in reality. In reality, there are facts. So there is oxygen in this room. That's a fact. That's a fact. So carbon dioxide is this many parts per million. That's a fact. So we have painstakingly, we have measured it. So that's a fact. Now, what is a pseudo fact? Imagine that I am a flat earther, and I believe that the earth is flat. So in my mind, this belief is not a belief. It's a fact, but it's a fact only in my mind. So it's a wrong thing basically. So there are these pseudo facts. So believe me, this flat earther example is a very common example and a very straightforward example which I have taken, but it's not that simple basically. So we have a lot of beliefs in our minds which we think they are facts, but they are actually pseudo facts because they are not real, but we think that they are real. Now some people think that yes, this guy, this politician, I like it because he is very good. He does a lot of good things about people. So this is a belief, but you might think that this is fact, but no, this is a belief. So in reality, he's a very corrupt guy, but you think that this guy is good. So it's a pseudo fact. So in reality, what we have to do is basically we have to differentiate between a fact and a pseudo fact. So this fact and pseudo fact is very important. Now you have to understand that Einstein. So before Einstein, everyone thought that time is absolute, and this was considered to be a fact. But once Einstein's special relativity came, Einstein told that every point can have its own measure of time. So time is actually relative; it's not absolute. So this time is absolute became a pseudo fact. It no longer remained a fact. So in science, it's there are more number of beliefs than there are facts. Okay, so some people might say that this is the level. Some people might say this is the level. Some people might say this is the level. The actual level is this. So there is only one actual level, but there are some people who believe in other different levels. So you have to understand that beliefs are much more common than facts, and pseudo facts are also very, very common. But we have to, in scientific method, we have to basically differentiate between a fact and a pseudo fact and a belief. So this distinction is very, very important. And the scientific method is basically a formation of belief and then checking whether this belief is true or not. So you form a hypothesis or a theory. So this theory is basically a belief. So some scientists believe that the Big Bang is a reality. Some scientists think that no, Big Bang is not the reality. The inflationary cosmology is the reality. Still others think that it's not the Big Bang, but it's the Big Bounce, which is a reality. Some people think that the space-time is divided into small things called as loops. So they are loopy physicists, and still others think that everything is made up of strings. So these are all beliefs. So basically, what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to generate beliefs, and then we are trying to make them into models, and then trying to derive predictions, and trying to see if these beliefs are basically fitting in, and these theories are making some prediction which we can measure, and they are fitting in whatever is already pre-existing laws which we know already. So the scientific method you have to understand is basically generation of new beliefs and analyzing them and extrapolating them, and then experimentally testing them. So it's basically beliefs. So you have to be extremely sure about beliefs. So you have to understand what is a belief. Now, what is a confirmation bias and congruence bias? What is CCP cycle? Now, the CCP cycle, nobody has, this is my terminology, nobody knows. So, but this congruence bias and confirmation bias, these are very commonly described. So if you have a belief, it starts with a belief. Okay. If you have a belief, and if you want to check it that it's true or not, ideally what you are supposed to do is that you have to collect data which proves the belief right, and you collect the data which proves the belief wrong. If you collect only that data which proves your belief right, that is called as congruence bias. If you disregard all the data which is telling that your belief is wrong, you disregard them. That is, you just don't collect it. That is congruence bias. Confirmation bias is what? Wherever you are seeing, you try to try to confirm your pre-existing prejudices or beliefs, um, because nobody likes to lose, or nobody likes to be proven wrong. So if some particular paper is proving my pre-existing belief wrong, then it generates cognitive strain. But if I'm reading a paper which suggests that my pre-existing beliefs are right, then I get cognitive ease. So I like it. I feel pleasure on reading those papers. So if you are reading papers only of which are matching to your beliefs, that is confirmation bias. And if you are generating papers, you are creating more and more, you are so this congruence bias, I can give some more examples. Imagine that you are a doctor, you are an epidemiologist, and you hear that in a city there is a diarrheal disease outbreak. So there is a lot of people are having diarrheal diseases. So you have this belief that yes, this diarrheal disease is basically foodborne. So what do? There are multiple ways by which you can do your study. What if just think, if you do your study like this, that you just collect food samples, but you don't collect water samples, you don't collect stool samples, you don't collect urine samples, you don't collect blood samples, you don't collect some air samples also. So it could be anything. It could be a diarrheal disease, it could be a viral disease, it could be food poisoning, or it could be anything. So it could be a waterborne virus like cholera, or it could be a rotavirus like virus which is spreading through stools. So if you are collecting only one type of data, and if you disregard all the other kinds of data, so you are collecting only one kind of data, which is basically proving your belief right, and that's wrong, because that is congruence bias. If you have extreme degree of congruence bias, means what? So if you are believing that nature is made up of strings, this is belief, and what you are supposed to do is the problem with string theory and all these theories is that they are so much into theory that you cannot collect any data. So there is no question of confirmation bias or congruence bias, but the reality is that stringy physicists are stringy physicists, and loopy physicists are loopy physicists. They have extreme amount of congruence bias. This congruence bias is so great that they just don't want to think anything beyond what their capacity of thinking is. So basically, this current physics has extreme amount of congruence bias, and that is their line of thinking just doesn't go beyond fields, and it doesn't go beyond one particular line of thinking, not beyond higher dimensions and strings and vector fields and scalar fields, and that's it. And mathematics and derivation. So that's called as out of the box thinking. So they have some prejudices, and these prejudices are so badly woven into the minds of a physics PhD guy that these prejudices, they cannot think beyond those prejudices. So the prejudices have to be there. There are some prejudices, unfortunately, which are based on Einstein's theory of special relativity, which I will go into detail later. So you have to understand the importance of congruence bias. So what is a CCB cycle? Well, CCB cycle is something like that. If you have a belief and you make a paper out of that belief, and then another guy who also has that belief. He is basically he's finding out papers which confirm his belief. So he's basically indulging in confirmation bias. So your congruence bias helps his confirmation bias become more serious. So his congruence bias, confirmation bias, belief bias means what? Your confirmation bias and your congruence bias and his confirmation bias led to his belief bias to become much better, much bigger. So his belief now that he has read your paper. So the first scientist is string theorist, and he writes one paper on string theory. And then second scientist who wants to confirm it. So he reads it. His belief that nature is made up of strings becomes further, and then he again writes. His belief bias increases. So he again writes with confirmation, with congruence bias. His thinking is going in that direction only. So he again writes a paper. Then again, the third scientist confirms it, and the cycle goes on. The cycle goes on. So this confirmation bias, sorry, congruence bias, confirmation bias, belief bias cycle, or CCB cycle, is extremely relevant we have to understand it, and unless we understand it, we won't be able to decipher. Anyhow, so it is the congruence bias basically in the field of physics, which is the reason why it has. There are other biases actually. Okay, so there is, according to me, there are some belief biases. There's something called as the Dunning-Kruger effect. There is something called as self-serving bias. All these things I will be explaining into detail in some other video, but these are extremely important cognitive biases, and these are not mentioned in my book basically, but these are the ones which are the reason why physicists cannot or could not think in the lines which were needed to decode the gravity and the theory of everything. Of course, there were some things which were missing basically, but I think after quantum mechanics was completely described, they had everything actually. So there was no reason why they could not have deciphered what I have deciphered in the book. So it is even more important that now when physicists are reading the book, they keep their confirmation bias and congruence bias. Confirmation bias is what, they have some they have some pre-existing prejudices in their mind that this theory is absolutely right and this theory is absolutely wrong. Like Mond is wrong. No, there is no other alternative to Mond. Dark matter is absolutely right. These are all beliefs and these are prejudices. And it's unfortunate that people with hundreds of papers published, and these people are having so firm prejudice that they just don't want to even look at Mond, which is such an interesting theory. So why like that? So until physicists are able to understand what is congruence bias and what is confirmation bias, and they have to keep their prejudices aside, and you have to keep your physicist hat aside, and you have to keep thinking in that in that manner. Your mindset has to change. Your mindset, you have to keep your ego aside, your self-serving bias aside, and you have to inculcate scientific humility within you. That that feeling that yes, I'm just a human, I could be wrong. So until that happens, people are not going to understand what I have written in the book, because people are just going to get this confirmation bias will not work. So people, the things which are given in the book will not conform with the pre-existing prejudices of the physicists. So people will their psychology will take over, and they will fall prey of psychology, and they will basically um, just push it aside and brush it under the carpet. That's what has happened with so many big good theories. Anyhow, so thank you very much for your attention.